Welcome to High Infidelity, the best cheating videos on YouTube. If you enjoy this content, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now let's get into the video.
I'm a married mother of two and I attend parties when my husband is at work. Here's my admission. I'll try to make it as clinical as possible, but it contains NSFW material. Names have been altered to protect the guilty, and this is a joke for obvious reasons. I'm 36, I've been married for 12 years, I have 2 girls and I've been cheating on my husband for the last year and a half. I attend parties a few times a month when hubby is at work and my children are at school. It's fantastic. It's entirely transformed my life, and I have no regrets or guilt about anything. Backstory. I was bored and dissatisfied in my mid-30s. I'm not sure why, except that I was sick of being a wife and mother. Everything I've read on the internet indicates that this is normal and that many ladies go through it. I wasn't clinically sad, but I felt like something crucial was missing in my life. Hubby saw this and performed everything correctly. He did everything a man is supposed to do in circumstances like these. He advised attending courses, pursuing a master's degree, pursuing new interests, organizing a reading club, and working part-time. He treated me to a couple of pleasant vacations. He brought us out to supper on a regular basis so that I wouldn't have to. Whatever else I can say about husband, he is a lovely guy and I am fortunate to have him. But nothing he did made the least difference to my sentiments, and yes, I am aware that this all makes me spoiled and entitled. Amy, my buddy, enters the picture. We met via a mothers and toddlers group years ago and have been friends ever since. We get lunch together once a week, our husbands golf together, and we're just disgustingly typical suburban middle-class housewives. Amy invited me to a party the next day at a lunch in June of 2014. A midday celebration. People would be having during a party. I'm portraying it as though she sprang this on me out of nowhere. But that's deceptive. Amy had been bringing up extramarital in discussion for a few months before this. She'd mentioned this or that acquaintance who was rumored to be cheating. She questioned whether I believed I'd ever cheat, what it felt like to cheat, why people cheat, and just overall wore the topic to death in my opinion. It seems like everything had been leading up to this. Amy had seen a web page about an organization that conducted parties in the neighborhood and was eager to go. She'd invited another of our friends, but the buddy, Barbara, refused to attend unless I did as well. The party was essentially a mixer organized once a month for newcomers to meet regulars. Men had to pay a fee to enter, couples paid a lower amount, and ladies went free of charge. I agreed to attend, but it wasn't for at the time. It was all about the hilarity of going to a party with the gals while our husbands were at work. I had no intention of having intercourse with anybody. In fact, when I imagined the males who attended these gatherings, I saw balding moustachioed, overweight dudes in polyester. I expected us to go out, get drunk, and laugh ourselves sick at all the losers. But I'm not going to lie in this situation. I was also intrigued by the prospect of doing anything without my husband around. I purchased a pair of hold-up stockings to wear on my way home after lunch. Hubby was always obsessed with stockings, but I felt they were too much work. They were designated for his birthdays and anniversaries, much like lingerie. Stockings had never really been my thing, if that makes sense, but when I got them, I was ecstatic. My spouse was not going to be there, so I planned to wear stockings. The next day, I dressed on my nicest black lace underwear, stockings, and a lovely dress and went to meet Amy and Barbara. We were all frightened and giggling like a bunch of schoolgirls. I believed that if one of us had cold feet, the rest of us would have followed suit, and that would have been the end of it. But we all made it to the location, which was a spacious but unremarkable suburban home. The gatherings are organized by a woman who goes by her initials, so I'll refer to her as Carol. She seems to be in her 40s, tall and curvy, and she nails the big blonde look to perfection. She clearly recognized us as the frightened newcomers that we were and was really kind to us. She chatted with us for quite some time and said that she conducts midday parties 3 or 4 times a month, as opposed to 2 or 3 times a week for nighttime events. The midday gatherings are her housewife specials, designed for those who are unable to leave their homes in the evenings due to family duties. They host a special mixer party for absolute newcomers once a month, which is what I was going. At this gathering, there were 7 ladies and 11 males. The youngest lady seemed to be in her late 20s, while the others varied in age from mid-30s, myself, A and B, to late 40s. The guys were not Greek gods in the traditional sense. Fabio was not present on that particular day. They weren't, however, repulsive creeps. There was no polyester in sight, and the sole guy who was bald and fairly overweight was also really nice. There was a main space where people could congregate and socialize and have, as well as rooms upstairs for seclusion. So we drank wine and played games that required us to remove our garments as a penalty. It was a lot of fun and a lot of excitement. I ended myself seated on a sofa in my underwear, next to a nude older guy. I allowed him to place his hand on my leg when he asked. It was the first time someone had touched me since I met my spouse. I'm sure most of you believe I'm immoral and nasty, but I'm not completely deafeningly. I felt butterflies and awful anxieties, despite how much joy and excitement it was. I was aware that I was on the edge of cheating on my spouse. I could justify what I'd done up to this point as not really counting. Being nude in public, even allowing a guy to touch my leg, wasn't truly cheating. I recall scanning the room to see what my pals were up to. Amy sat nude between a guy and a woman, grinning like the Cheshire Cat. Barbara was sitting on a man's knee. I remember deciding that I wouldn't go any further, but the man beside me must have noticed my nerves because he put his hand on my arm and reassured me that I wasn't obligated to do anything unless I wanted to, and that no one would object if I used the magic word no or refused to take off any more clothes. That, for some reason, persuaded me that I should go farther. I'm not sure why, but that act made me feel comfortable enough to go farther, and suddenly I wanted to go further. As a forfeit, I removed my bra, and the guy next me, whose name I never learned, requested if he might touch my breasts. I, of course, answered yes. I had with him as a result of one thing leading to another. We didn't even visit any of the private rooms. We did it right in front of everyone. It didn't last long, but it felt like the finest I'd ever experienced. After that, I was prepared for what I expected to happen. Guilt. I was expecting to sink in a sea of sorrow, regret, and guilt. I had cheated on my husband. While my children were in school and my beautiful husband worked tirelessly to pay for the home I lived in, the food I ate, and the clothes I wore, I was having in public with a guy I'd met 45 minutes earlier. But guilt never arrived. I felt better than I had in a long time. My only regret was not doing this year sooner. I returned home, had a shower, picked up my daughters from school, and prepared supper. When husband walked in, I kissed him with the same lips that had been wrapped around another man's penis 5 hours before. I didn't feel bad at the time, and I still don't. I was afraid that I'd be so overcome with guilt that I'd rush up to husband as soon as he stepped through the door and confess what I'd done. I jumped on him, to be sure. We had on the sofa in our living room after the girls went to bed. I even wore the stockings I'd been wearing earlier that day. To grasp the importance of this, you must first realize that our life has been diminishing since we were married. We had all the time before we were married. It dropped to a couple times a month after we were married. After I had our second child, it was uncommon for me to see her more than once a month. This is all my fault. I didn't want to have relations. I'm not sure why. My husband continued to try to initiate it, but 9 times out of 10, I promptly turned him down. To the degree that I feel guilty about my marriage, it is entirely because of how I treated my husband in the past, not because of the I've been having with other guys. Poor husband assumed that all of his Christmases had arrived at once. I was a regular at Carol's midday gatherings for the following 3 weeks. Amy accompanied me to one, but I went to the others on my own. My week was made complete by the celebration. Hubby would leave to work. I'd drop the daughters off at school. I'd spend the morning getting ready and looking my best, then I'd put on some lingerie and something seductive and go to the location. The first party I'd attended was a mixer designed to expose newcomers to the idea. The other parties were unique. Some were themed, there were fewer activities, and although everyone was polite, it was much more blatantly than the previous party. I had with 5 guys over the following 3 weeks, including the obese, bald, Very plain man who had been so lovely at the first party. He didn't seem like much, but his personality made up for it. And he was terrifyingly amazing at oral. Every time I went to a party, I was giddy for days following. My spouse and I's life increased from once a month to at least 3 times a week. There were a number of things I wouldn't do before on the few times that we had, but now I do them all joyfully. With all of these other individuals made me value my life with my husband even more. I got rid of all of my tights and replaced them with stockings, proper ones, not hold-ups. I wore lingerie every day and made sure my spouse was aware of it. We'd exchange romantic emails and messages while he was at work, something we'd never done before. I joined a gym and resolved to achieve a scrumptious mommy figure. My life has improved enormously in the year and a half since I started attending these events, as has hubby's. He's happy now. I'm happy now. I've been to gangbang parties where I had with 6 men in a row. Girl-only parties where I had with both A and B, which was funny and awkward. And another where Carol used on me, and then I fisted her. My first time for both acts. A buckache party with another girl and maybe a dozen men. So messy and so much fun. And I even went to a TV admirers party where I got oral from. Imagine my disappointment when the black man declined to have with me because he only likes TV. I made it to a handful of evening parties while husband was gone overnight, and I'd been able to leave the children to their grandparents. Deborah, a solicitor, became a new friend of mine. Every few weeks, she wears lingerie and stockings beneath her suit, slips out of the office to attend a party, and has sex. Sometimes with me, sometimes with guys, sometimes with both, in the main room before returning to her office. Since I'm being honest here, I'll make another admission. I'm getting wet from the deception. I get a kick out of misleading my hubby about what I'm up to. My husband and I had a dinner party a few months ago. Deborah and her husband were invited. I can't even express how excited I was as I glanced around the table at my pals, Amy, Barbara, and Deborah, and remembered the secret we shared. I'm sure they felt the same way I did. Our husbands were completely unaware, but I'd had with each of their wives. They'd slept with me. This gives me a sensation that rivals anything I've ever had from. I like having with husband after having with other guys. I like how he has no idea what I've been up to. Some weekends, I force my husband to take me to a delicatessen since it's the only store around that sells a certain sort of cheese. But it isn't the main reason I like going there. The true reason is because the owner attends the parties, and it excites me to see my husband order Monterey Jack and sliced turkey from this guy after I'd had my tongue in his anus only a few days before. I've had with 54 men, 11 women, 3 TVs, and 1 pre-op TS with a fantastic breast job to date, and I don't intend to stop anytime soon. I've been pierced through every orifice. I've probably attempted every legal action you can think of. An older guy I met at a schoolgirl-themed party even introduced me to Ageplay. So, based on all of this, you may conclude that I am a really awful guy. I'm having kinky with random people as my spouse, a way to provide for me. As if that wasn't awful enough, I like telling falsehoods. I have no regrets, remorse, or guilt. In fact, I believe husband is doing rather well out of the transaction. At this point, I'm willing to accommodate whatever fantasies or desires he may have. I'll dress up in any clothes or costume he wants. We've had more times in the previous 18 months than we have throughout the whole duration of our relationship. He has no idea what I'm doing, therefore he can't be harmed by it. Despite this, I know I should feel awful. I don't think I'm a sociopath. I have the ability to feel sorrow, guilt, and humiliation. I'm simply not feeling it about this. My pals A and B sometimes chat about how they deal with guilt and how the joy is sometimes eclipsed by the humiliation. I'm unable to connect in any manner. It's all in good fun for me. I'm loving every minute of it, even though I know most people will think I'm a disgusting, selfish, immoral who cares more about obtaining than her family's well-being. There may be some truth to that, but I can't alter my feelings. That's my admission.